I'm not sure how any of this
Can,
is incompatible with the idea that we shouldn't be forcing gender roles on people.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Based on the amount of sexism and discrimination that happens in these fields, why do you think it's okay to be promoting that onto women anyway? Aren't they going to struggle in that? Don't you want women to be in a society and a culture that's better for them? If you're trying to push a culture on them that's like all of this sexism and all that stuff
No,
in
this
it,
is a this
that's
is a
just bad
very
for them.
no, this
Like,
is a very dumb argument because you could equally say, yeah, well, when there was Jim Crow, why would you want to push to get rid of that? Because everyone's going to be racist. LOL. You get rid of the racism, or in this case, you get rid of the sexism by introducing more diversity into those fields.
I,
I don't know. Did are you okay? Like, are
what
you
do you
living?
mean? Am I okay?
Like, it
I don't
sounds to me like
understand.
you're no. It sounds to me like you're living in a home with lead paint. Like the arguments you're making are so disconnected. They make no fucking sense. The cognitive dissonance here is it's unfathomable. You're saying you're in favor of enforcing gender roles and expectations. So, first of all, very nice name. It's really quite sweet that you are named after my daughter. So that's really cool.
Am I really? That's so cool.
I have a daughter named Rose. So I
Oh, we love that. I picked that name for a reason, okay? I'm a trans woman.
Oh, okay, okay. No, and
Yeah.
honestly, I was just teasing too because I always find it funny when I claim people are naming themselves or others after my daughter who is only like 3 years old. I think that's pretty funny. So,
Yeah, no, I named myself in 2014, so I got you beat there, but that's cool.
damn. All right, sucks.
Yeah.
So anyway, you hit me up on Twitter. I think you said that
Yes.
you're trans and you disagree with me on like everything. So this should be interesting.
Well, I disagree with Vosh on everything, but I mean, I don't know how I feel about with you. So first of all, I'm a trans woman. I don't believe in abolishing gender. I think that's a very harmful thing to do. I think it's very important to have clothing that's specific to men and women because you need to have someone like if you have clothes that are clearly for women and clearly for men, you need to be able to have like a non-passing trans person walk in the world and not automatically be like, "Wow, you're a man wearing a dress. You're so woke." Like, no, how about if you wear a dress, like automatically she, her, that person? Because like a man's not going to do that. It just makes trans people feel really weird, and I hate it. Also, I mean, when you remove gender expression and you remove all of that, all you have left is biological sex. Like when you're removing gender, abolitionism, and all that, gender expression's out the door, biological sex, it's just the turfs. It's just you're doing the turf thing, but like a weird workaway where you're pretending to be trans inclusive. I don't like it. Like Harry Styles wearing a dress, it's very bad for trans women. That's obviously one example. I think gender roles are great, and I'm also pro life. So that's a lot. I'll let you start wherever you want.
We'll probably start with the gender stuff because I think that that's going to be the most interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so I actually, you make some good points already about abolishing gender
Face.
entirely leaves you up only, it leaves you left with nothing but biological sex. So I can see that, that argument being made. The thing is that I have definitely argued from a perspective of gender abolition, but I'm not sure where I would fall exactly in that realm. Like, I think that when I talk about abolishing gender, I don't mean completely remove gender. I mean remove what is it? What am I looking for? Like the forcefulness of gender, because there's always going to exist gender. I don't think that you're ever going to live in a society where like nobody has a gender. I think that when I talk about abolishing gender, I more mean abolishing the rigid expectations that we place on people in regards to their gender. And usually those rigid expectations are aligned with biology, right? So it would be you have a vagina, so then the rigid expectation is that you must wear a dress, you must express yourself this way, you must behave this certain way. So when I say abolish gender, I'm not talking about like living in a genderless blob of a world. I mean, of course, there's going to exist like gender no matter what. I just mean get rid of the rigid application of the gender roles and expectations. So, why do you feel that gender roles are beneficial? And do you feel like it's beneficial the way that they are kind of enforced right now, or are you in favor of lessening that?
It's a very interesting question. The first thing I want to mention is like people, I've had people, I'm not saying you, but people in the past have told me, oh, you're a hypocrite. You're trans and you support traditional gender roles. You do realize that like you being trans is against traditional gender roles. And I have to tell them, no, me acting feminine, being a traditional woman isn't contradictory to that. I think that gender roles are perfectly good. I think, like I said, it's important to have that distinction so that you see somebody on the street based on their clothing alone, you automatically can tell what gender that person's going for. I think that is a valid thing. And it saves us from this mess that we have currently, where it's like everybody, I go into Twitter and some people will be like, oh, hi, ask them or ask they. And I'm like, you do know you're so woke that you're misgendering a trans woman right now. It's absolute absurdity.
Well, I think that I'm a little confused because when you say traditional gender roles, what is a traditional gender role? Is it just whatever is culturally recognized as the norm of the time?
Yeah. Oh, so I've seen this argument before that like, oh, well, gender roles change over time. Therefore, it's like, first of all, I will acknowledge to some extent that like, dresses being feminine. Okay, maybe that's like socially constructed in a way. But, like if you go say, oh, well, actually 200 years ago, heels were designed for men. Therefore, like, no, that's not true. Because just because like something was that way, first of all, I'm very attached to what we have currently, right? Like, obviously, I think there's a need to have something there. And sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah,
I want to make sure I'm not off topic.
No, not. Don't worry. When you say like traditional gender roles are important, it sounds like what you're saying. Because what is a traditional gender role? They have changed, and you just brought up the dress, for example. I mean, in Scotland, men wear skirts, but they're called kilts.
Yeah.
So the way in which you express your gender identity can vary. And again, I feel like we might be already talking past each other a little bit because. Just to be crystal clear, I'm not advocating to get rid of gender entirely. I am advocating to get rid of these rigid gender expectations that we place on people. So we might disagree more so with the you're a woman, you must wear a dress kind of thing. Whereas you can be a woman who doesn't wear a dress. Harry Styles can be a man who is wearing a dress. Why does that need to be applied to women only? There are other ways right now, for example, that women dress and present themselves that don't involve wearing a dress.
I understand. I just think that a man wearing a dress is harmful. First of all, I think that when it comes to gender expression, I think that over time, you look at different cultures and different societies, there are certain aspects that change, but there are other aspects that'll be, the same regardless of culture. And that's because I do believe, the male and female brain. That's why I think I'm trans. That's why I knew I was a girl at 2 years old. Obviously, if male and female brains didn't exist, I don't know how you'd come to that conclusion. But basically, I do believe that there is, like, for instance, when I take estrogen changes my brain structure to act a certain way. When you have, estrogen in your brain, you have testosterone in your brain. Those act in two very different ways. But so based on that, that's going to inform a lot of the a lot of the, ways we express gender. So there's going to be some consistency there.
It's going to inform the way in which you choose to adhere to certain social constructs, but it's not your brain chemistry that tells you that you must wear a dress. It's your brain chemistry that's set up in a way that says you are a woman, you want to be more feminine, that is your desire, and what it means to be more feminine means to adhere to certain cultural expectations and standards that right now we associate with being feminine. Am I right or wrong? Like, do you agree?
You're right in some ways, yeah. But it's like when it comes to like wearing a dress, like obviously what a dress could be feminine, something else could take that role in a different society, in a different culture. But there are certain like, I think there are certain things that biologically like appeal. Like I think you look at studies when it looks like, you give a doll in like a car to like a 3-year-old and the people biologically, male and female, like gravitate to different things. Like I think there is a sense of like, yeah.
No, that could be more based on the fact that you're right that biological males do tend to gravitate towards things that involve working with their hands, whereas biological females tend to drawn more towards faces and interpersonal kind of relationships. So that could be extrapolated to be something much more broad. No one has the liking for pink or dolls or trucks baked into their biology. That doesn't really make sense. I do agree, though, like you said, that there are certain aspects of the human brain that cause people to gravitate towards more working with their hands or building things, whereas, biological females on average are more drawn towards the faces and expressions and interpersonal relationships. That could easily explain why, in a scenario with a truck and a doll, that could be that way. But I mean, couldn't you just as easily do something differently? What if you gave a little boy the option to build his own doll, and then you gave the woman the ability to, I don't know, work with, I don't know, you could come up with an example easily, I think. But like, if you gave the little boy a doll in which he could then build that doll, that he could very easily gravitate towards that then. because it's something
Yeah,
that
well,
involves working with his hands. But even more so, even if what you said a second ago was completely true and accurate, then why should that inform the way in which we enforce these roles on people? So if there's a study that shows that boys are more likely to gravitate towards trucks, we shouldn't then force the little boy to like trucks or to act a certain way or to dress a certain way. And this kind of is where toxic masculinity comes from.
oh, here we go. That's the word. That's the phrase. I would say that there, like I said, you said before, there are some aspects that are socially constructed, and there are other aspects that come from biology. I think that's a mix of both. I think to say it's just one or the other is to simplify the issue. So I just
Well, I
think,
didn't
I
say it
think
was
we've
one or the
seen.
other. I recognize that
Okay, fair.
the way that male and female brains operate can inform the way in which they conform to certain social constructs or the way in which they gravitate towards certain activities or toys. But the question is not, is this something that is normally and naturally happening? The question is, based on that, should we then enforce these things? Because obviously, if we live in a free society and you're a little girl and you want to play with dolls and paint your room pink, go for it. Cool. The problem is when the little boy then says, oh, I want to paint my room pink also. And then you get the no son of mine kind of thing.
Yeah, so I would say, like, I mean, when you look at Sweden or these cultures where it's like, basically they let you do whatever you want, you see that naturally children tend to basically gravitate towards that based on their gender, and there's some who don't, and that's the thing. You can be trans inclusive about this. People like me, transgender woman, I conform to the female stuff, but I can still be a female and conform to that culture. And it's like they've tried in the past, like I've seen so many times they push STEM on girls, and it's like, oh, guys, we're going to paint the STEM stuff pink and we're going to make it have this pretty layout. Like, how has that worked for them? I don't think that
I
works.
don't think
I
that's
don't
what
think
it's
it.
looked like to try and push women into STEM.
Damn it.
I don't
Make girls code. It's pink.
I
Get
don't
them
think
into
that it's
STEM.
just the pink stuff. Usually there are programs that really try to make an effort to encourage women to pursue the sciences. And that's a really good thing. One, we're aware of the way in which having diversity benefits fields of careers or the sciences. And we're also aware of the fact that right now there are biases that exist against women. Women are, like, there was a study I read once that explained how little girls, when growing up, are more likely or less likely to be encouraged by their father to pursue fields such as math or science, whereas when the son is pursuing that, the father is more likely to be very encouraging of that. That plays a role in shaping the perspective that people have of themselves and the type of careers that they might pursue later on in life. I'm not sure how any of this
Can,
is incompatible with the idea that we shouldn't be forcing gender roles on people.
can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Based on the amount of sexism and discrimination that happens in these fields, why do you think it's okay to be promoting that onto women anyway? Aren't they going to struggle in that? Don't you want women to be in a society and a culture that's better for them? If you're trying to push a culture on them that's like all of this sexism and all that stuff
No,
in
this
it,
is a
that's just bad for them.
no, this
Like,
is a very dumb argument because you could equally say, yeah, well, when there was Jim Crow, why would you want to push to get rid of that? Because everyone's going to be racist. LOL. You get rid of the racism, or in this case, you get rid of the sexism by introducing more diversity into those fields. That
okay, so
simultaneously
first,
fixes it because those fields are not sexist in the sense that if a woman walks in, they're all like, oh, who are you? What are you doing in here? Oh my God. It's more that the way in which women are raised, they are generally taught to pursue other career options that don't involve sciences or mathematics. And thus, those become more male dominated. But you can introduce more women into those fields and simultaneously would reduce the sexism. Just let it be known that by your logic, we shouldn't have gotten rid of Jim Crow laws. You could literally apply that there.
you're trying to make, I don't believe that it's a one-to-one, but I can see what you're trying to go with there.
No,
I can
it
tackle that.
literally is a one-to-one. Because if you have a society in which black people are discriminated against and they are kept out from certain businesses and they have their own separate waterfall or water fountains and they're kept in the back of the bus, you could have said, well, why should we even be getting rid of that? If you care about black people and you get rid of that, you're basically forcing people to associate with black people when they don't really like black people. You're just going to make racism worse, right? But that's not what
Well,
happened. That's literally not what happened.
think there's a way to integrate that. And also, when it comes to it, there's no biological reason why black people and white people should be different buses, but there's a biological reason why men and women choose different fields. And it's like,
No.
Look at the
Even if
Blizzard
they're
allegations. This
no.
stuff is so terrible. Why would you want to put your daughter into
Hold
that?
on, wait.
You know?
Even if there were biological reasons to a degree, that's almost irrelevant because we can't change biology to the same degree that we can change social standards and social expectations. So even if there was some biological brain chemistry thing that made women less likely to pursue mathematics, that's irrelevant. We should still make sure that those opportunities are equally available to both men and women shouldn't be discouraged from pursuing those fields because they are women, or again, because there are rigid gendered expectations that are placed on people that say, no, you need to be more quiet, you need to be more of a homemaker, this is kind of your role in society. So even if there were a biological reason, which I don't know if there is, because I'm pretty sure there are studies that also show that women are really excellent at logistics and multitasking, I don't know why that would even be relevant, because we can't change biology. We can change social expectations and social standards.
But the thing is, like, when you say it's like we need to have both, there's completely equal opportunity. If a woman wants to sign up for a STEM field, she can and she will. And they're actually encouraged. These big corporations are encouraging them to do so, and they still won't do it because it's so bad for them.
No, so there's two different layers here. There is the legal equality, which I recognize that pursuing a career doesn't necessarily fall within the legal realm, but there's the practical level of equality, as in, I'm a woman and I want to get a STEM degree. They're not going to say, you're a woman, so no, you're not allowed to do that, kind of like in the past where they wouldn't let women go to college. So women do have equality there, but there's still this social inequality that exists, largely due to these rigid gendered expectations that we force on people. So sure, if a woman wants to go out and pursue STEM, she's not going to be legally kept from doing that, or the institution's going to have to allow her to pursue that, but that discounts the fact that growing up, women or girls are less likely to be encouraged to pursue those things, which goes without saying that is obviously going to influence the decisions made later on in life.
That probably does have an impact, but it's like if you're a parent and you know, hey, there's like a 90% chance that your daughter's not going to be interested in this, why would you be so incessant to push that on somebody? If your daughter does say, hey, I want to do STEM, then okay,
you're literally
fine,
advocating to push things on them. You're advocating for pushing the rigid gendered expectations. I'm not saying that parents need to say, you're going to be a scientist when you grow up. That's all you can be, okay? You're going to be a scientist. You have to be a scientist.
My parents did that with me.
Okay, in which that would be bad. You shouldn't be forcing your child to do, I don't want to say anything, because of course there are some things that you have to keep your kid from doing or force them to do. But generally speaking, you shouldn't try to brainwash or indoctrinate your child to pursue a certain career field. But this applies to what I'm saying. You shouldn't say, you're a woman, STEM isn't really for you, this is more of a boys thing, why don't you look at the, culinary school or whatever. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic there, but the social expectations are placed on people, and that encourages influences the decisions that they make. You shouldn't be telling girls, you have to be a scientist, just like you shouldn't be telling girls, you have to be a stay-at-home mom, or you have to do this. We're both in agreement that we shouldn't be having these rigid expectations placed on people. It just seems as though you want to keep one level of rigid expectation while getting rid of another.
I just think that it works for most women, and if someone deviates from that norm, then you can have those conversations. I don't think that we should be discriminatory and say, no, you can't be doing this, but also let's not deny reality that hey, most people are going to be interested in this. So maybe when you talk about it, go with the assumption
that's not
that
the reality. The reality that more men are interested in STEM is based on the society and the way that we construct these social expectations. The reality might be that it might be the reality that there are more men in the STEM fields, but that is a result of social and cultural norms and expectations, aka gender. So by going my path of gender's always going to exist, if a little girl has another friend who's a little girl and she likes dolls and she likes the color pink and that's what she wants to do, go for it. Be my guest. I don't like the idea of saying, no, just if you're a girl doesn't mean you have to like pink. I'm painting your room blue, haha. But again, the problem is when they want to deviate from that. And then it's enforced anyway.
what I'm saying is not that you should prevent this. I'm saying that if a girl on her own accord says I want to do this, then I guess let her. But like, unless that happens, don't be like, hey guys, welcome to high school. Let's only invite the women to do these STEM things because we need more women in STEM. #equality.
I agree, but you're making the same argument. You're making the same argument. You're saying it should actually be, let's just mainly invite the men because the reality of it is that there are more men in STEM.
I think more men want to do STEM, and yeah, that could stem from like, you know, the parents pushing it more on them. But like I said, I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because I think like I said, I think men often do want to do more STEM, and if a woman does show interest in it, I think.
Well, why do they want to do that? Okay, wait. Do you acknowledge or deny the fact that we are all products of our environment?
To some extent, we're products to environment and biology. So
the way in which our biology interacts with environment still means that our environment ultimately shapes who we become. So if you're in an environment, if you're in an environment where you are told that, hey, Timmy, you're a man, all right? That means you should really be a scientist. Maybe you should be a doctor when you grow up, Timmy. And then the woman doesn't, or the girl doesn't receive the same encouragement to pursue those things. That is going to dictate what these individuals want to do when they get older.
Well, actually, I don't buy the argument, because they told me that I should be a man, and look at me now. So, you know, it's like if a girl really is
your personal experience
she will find her way into STEM.
No, your personal experience does not speak for anyone other than yourself. That's a cheap argument. You cannot invoke your personal experience as a prescriptive device to place on everybody else. There are girls that also want to go to STEM and have been discouraged from this.
I think that actively discouraging is a good thing to do. I mean, I know it might sound like that, but that's not necessarily what I believe. I just think that, like, it's not a horrible thing that, like, most women don't want to, and you shouldn't force it on them. Maybe you don't think you're forcing it. Maybe that's a fair point to make. It sounds like you're advocating for more of a forceful approach. Whereas I'm saying there needs to be more of an equal approach where we don't act as if being in the STEM field is something only for men. We also don't act like it's something that's only for girls. We also don't act like you're a girl, so you have to do this or you have to do that. But then I think the problem is you recognize that if you bit that bullet, you would be somewhat agreeing with me that not abolishing gender necessarily, but abolishing the rigid standards that we place on people on the basis of gender needs to be done away with. What bullet exactly?
You would have to, if you bite the bullet that women should not be encouraged or discouraged from pursuing STEM on the basis of the fact that they're women, just like men shouldn't be encouraged or discouraged on the basis that they're men, then you're simultaneously agreeing partially with my perspective, which is get rid of these rigid gendered expectations to begin with. Because that's what you're doing in this scenario.
I mean, like I said, I think that we could have a society where it's like you don't encourage anyone to do anything and let them decide on themselves. I don't necessarily agree with that. But if you have an idea where it's like, okay, 90% of men are going to prefer this way and 90% of women are going to prefer this other way, I don't inherently see how it's harmful when it benefits the majority of the population. I don't agree with that.
It doesn't benefit the majority of the population. And again, you're ignoring the fact that why is this reality right now the way that it is? It's because of the way that they are socialized.
Like I said, to some extent, there's social elements there, but I don't fully agree with that. Like, I can acknowledge it has some factor, but not as much as you seem to think it does.
I don't know what other factor there could be, other than maybe you're going to say biology, which once again is completely irrelevant because we can't change biology.
Okay, but like, that's the point. If you can't change it, why would you want to try to change it? You know what I'm saying?
No, wait. I'm not trying to change biology, but there are women that want to pursue STEM that are either discouraged from doing so or are not socialized to even really think of it or consider it as a viable option because they are women, and that should be done away with. That's ridiculous. Not to mention, women benefit the STEM fields. Women, for a long time, it was women had to be home with the kids. Now we have women in the workforce.
I think that's based.
And
I want to be a housewife.
Hold on, wait.
I'm okay with
It's
that.
based to be home with the kids if that is what you want to
I
do.
mean, I'm not saying that everybody. We used to have in the 1950s a society where one income households could pay for the whole family, but we don't have that anymore.
Wait,
So it's like it's really bad
stop,
economically,
stop.
and that's the only reason
No,
why it's where we
women
are now.
entering no, no, no. Women entering the workforce has benefited the economy and also has benefited whatever company they are working in. So for a long time it was you are a woman so you must be home with the children. There's nothing wrong with being a woman who wants to be home with the children. It's based in that case because they are pursuing what they want to do and living their lives freely. Women should
Well,
simultaneously not be discouraged from pursuing employment though.
I just think that women being in the workforce was a capitalist myth invented in the 50s to try to exploit people into basically working more of their way. Like a one household income used to be economically, financially feasible, and people were happier that way. Expecting women to do both work and raise the children is a lot to ask
This
for, and
is
that's why
so
the birth
untrue.
rates are
People,
so low.
no, okay. First of all, please don't get going on with the fucking birth rate thing. But it's not
It's
a
not the
better
racist thing you
time
think it
then.
is.
It wasn't a better time then than it was now. I would be more than happy to show you the suicide rate from the 50s into the 70s, and they were pretty fucking high. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they were higher than they are right now. So this idea
Well,
that this like romanticizing of the past when everybody was so much happier, oh, woo woo. First of all, there were stronger unions then. We didn't have the same level of inflation then. There wasn't as many career options then. There's a lot more to the economy and to our society now than there was in the 1950s or the 40s when women were more or less expected to be nothing but housewives. Not to mention, another quick
well,
fact is that women actually played a critical role in the early development of STEM. So it's not as if like
if you
women are just like not biologically set up for this when women actually played a massive role in developing STEM and particularly computing.
Okay, but here's the thing that I disagree with. I think that if women want to work, that's fine, but I hate the idea that women are societally told they have to work, and if a woman wants to be a housewife, there's this constant thing where it's like, you can't be. That's not
You don't
economically
realize that you're
feasible.
contradicting yourself right now. You're like
How?
caught in a
Explain.
web of
Explain.
contradictions. You don't like women being encouraged to pursue a career. So why then are you not simultaneously against this idea that women need to be encouraged or forced to do other things on the basis of the fact that they're women?
Well, I don't think that people should be encouraged to do like certain things. I think that if we go to biology, I think women typically are happier. I mean, I can speak for myself as a woman, unless people are transphobic and are going to say misogynist or sorry transphobic things to me because I disagree with them. I think that most people. I just don't think the workforce is built that way. I don't think it's good for people. I don't explain. I don't see how I'm being contradictory at this point.
You're being contradictory because you're saying it's bad to be forcing women to enter the workforce, but you're fine forcing women to adhere to other rigid gender stereotypes because you don't agree with my perspective, which is don't abolish gender, just abolish the rigid forcefulness of certain gender roles and expectations.
I don't think I'm forcing anybody to. I think that I'm like a lot more understanding than you give me credit for. I just don't agree with like the way it is now. But I think that I'm not trying to say like it's not as extreme as I think you think it is.
So are you okay then with women and men equally being encouraged to pursue STEM?
I'm okay with them all having the opportunity to encourage them if that is what they choose to come to individually. Then yeah, but
Wait,
not like
none of our decisions that we make are made purely individually. We need to be able to have some
yeah.
kind
There's
of
cultural influences.
So do you think as far as the cultural influence goes that women and men should be equally encouraged to pursue certain fields like STEM?
I don't think they should be equal encouraged. I think they should have equal opportunity.
Okay, so
I think those are two very different
let
things.
me go ahead and read this to you. The myth of the math brain is one of the most self-destructive ideas in American education. Research shows no innate cognitive biological differences between men and women in math. Many girls lose confidence in math by third grade. Boys, on the other hand, are more likely to say they are strong in math by second grade, before any performance differences are evident. A gendered math gap exists in elementary school, but it is really only evident among boys from higher income and predominantly white areas performing significantly higher in math, even compared to girls attending those same schools. Girls score higher than boys in math in lower income, predominantly black areas, but their scores are still disproportionately low compared to the scores for white boys in high income areas. So there's an issue right there with a confidence gap. And again, that is only from societal expectations and norms.
Are you trying to argue that we're logically better at math? Is that what you're trying to say?
Wait, could you say that again?
Didn't you? Are you trying to argue that women are biologically better than men at math? Is that what you're trying to argue here?
Hold on.
Like,
I'm not trying to be mean, but did you just listen to what I said, or would you like me to reread it?
Yeah, I did. I did listen to what you said. You said that, like,
I said there's
something
no
about, like,
biological. No, I said there's no biological differences.
I'd have to look into the study. I just know as soon as I took estrogen, I got a lot worse at math. I don't know if you call that social or whatever, but I can speak for that experience. Like, I used to be pretty good at math. I took estrogen, and now I'm horrible at math. So,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't care. This is correlation
Okay,
with no causation. I used to be really good at math, and then I started riding a bike, and now I suck at math. I guess bikes make me bad at math. Like, that's the equivalent of what you're saying right now.
But it's like, if you look, I mean, I can see, like, literally the study itself says that, like, women say that they're worse at math. Like, you could say that, oh, but they said there was no difference. Like, I don't know, maybe there is something there. I don't know. Like, you could say that that's social. I don't know if I necessarily think so.
I'm really confused what your ultimate point is that you're trying to make here then.
Like I said, I just believe that, it's important to have some things male and some things female. And especially as a trans woman myself, I think it's important to have that distinction. That is my overall goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that distinction can exist without it being enforced.
Well, there's ways to enforce things and not, like, active. Okay. So I know what you're trying to say, but, like, I don't think it should be, like, actively. I think you can encourage something without forcing it. Right. And if someone really wants to do that thing regardless, let them do it. But you can still encourage a society where people are, heavily encouraged to be in this. And I don't think encouraging and forcing are the same thing.
So can we encourage people to not socialize girls to be against the idea of pursuing STEM?
Like I said, you can encourage girls to do feminine stuff. And if they say they don't want to do it, then they don't have to do it. But you should still do the encouraging. Is that fair? I think that's fair.
No, because what you're advocating for only does harm. It just hurts people. For no reason.
How does it do harm?
There's nothing wrong.
Women are happy doing feminine stuff, and if they don't, they're able to not do that. So I don't get it.
They're able to not do it in despite of people like you who are advocating for these rigid gender standards. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be able to do what they want to do. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying we need to get rid of this idea that STEM is a boys thing and that staying home, being a staying home with the kids is a girl thing. That shouldn't be gendered. These things don't need to be gendered. And I'll go ahead and read you this as well, because I also want to read this to the stream from bestcolleges.com. Data shows that women make up a smaller percentage than men of the STEM workforce. A big part of this stems from the fact that women face unique challenges when pursuing STEM careers. Stereotypes about women's abilities start early, often undermining the confidence of girls in the mathematical and technical abilities. Furthermore, some educators underestimate girls' math abilities, encouraging them, either openly or tactically, to abandon their STEM ambitions. For instance, according to several studies, teachers awarded lower grades to girls for the same math work as boys. Gender stereotypes also shape career ambitions. When asked to draw a scientist or mathematician, girls drew a man twice as often as they did a woman, and boys almost always drew a man. So these are subconscious gendered expectations and roles that are playing a massive role in socializing people, and that is one of the reasons why we see way less women in STEM.
Think you're taking a reality of fact that is happening and you're implying your own, falsely projecting your own political bias beliefs onto it.
You're falsely projecting your own personal experience on shit. I'm not. I'm giving an actual explainer based on empiricism as to why that reality is the way it is right now.
I mean, that's what some people think. Obviously, I would disagree.
So you disagree with the studies?
The gender, and that's totally fine.
So you disagree with the studies?
I guess so, sure.
So you disagree with the empirical evidence explaining why we have less women in STEM? You think it's just like that they have the woman brain?
Based on what you read, it doesn't sound to me like that is a conclusive, all good. I think that's just someone looking at some reality and then putting their own bias and spin on it without any real proof or anything. That's just my opinion.
The real proof is the study.
How is that like a study though? That's just somebody saying, look, the women have like, there's less women in these fields. Now I'm going to tell you why I personally think that's the case. Like that's how it read to me.
Okay. Then maybe you don't understand how studies work. Nobody's saying this is personally the case. That's what you've been doing the whole time. By saying, well, personally, my parents said this, or personally, I thought this way, or personally, I did that. No one's saying personally anything. We're talking about a study which showed the way in which these expectations play a massive role in socializing women, and that is playing a role also in deterring women from pursuing STEM.
Well, they play some role, but it's not the full picture. And I think if you say it's the full picture, that's a dishonest thing to do.
So let's go ahead. I'm reading some more studies now for you, too. In one striking
Go
study
for it.
from 2015, Israeli researchers divided sixth grade exams in two sets for grading. One batch was graded by the teachers and included students' names, and the other contained no student names and was graded externally. In math, teachers graded boys higher, while external graders rated girls higher. Those low teacher grades then dissuaded girls for years to come. Teachers often harbor these biases about themselves too. Elementary school teachers are predominantly female, and many are anxious about teaching math, which can lead to lower achievement in math for girls. So this is like the domino effect right here. This is socializing women to think that they're not as good at math, which then influences teachers, which then perceive themselves as not being good at math, which then hinders their ability to confidently teach math to other girls, which then causes those girls to not feel as confident in math, and it's a vicious cycle. And it all stems from the rigid gendered expectation.
Well, here's the thing. I think I feel the same way about this that I do about like racial applications in college. Fun fact: I'm 50% Cuban. I think it's dumb that I have like an advantage over other people when I'm white and I was born rich. But whatever. Personally, I think it's the same way when you have racial people. It's like I think maybe you shouldn't be putting your race onto things. It's like how about we just look at people and who's the best for stuff? That's how you erase these biases in the first place.
You're advocating to keep the biases.
What I'm saying is if the real issue is that teachers are going to change it based on somebody's name, you take away the name, you take away the gender, and then you don't have the bias.
Do you think that maybe that's a problem if there is a bias that exists due to the fact that the name is a woman's name? Do you think that teachers are just going to blindly not be able to see whose work is what? This doesn't even make sense honestly, on a logistical level. Like, you have to label your work. The teacher needs to know how to file your work.
I'd have to sit down and think about how to best to practically implicate it. I mean, when you talk about college like entrances, it's probably an easier process to do. But I do think that, I mean, if that we're talking about the names and stuff being the problem and not the work itself.
It's not just the names. That's just one thing of it, which it plays a massive role in the overall expectations, which are there. They exist because of rigid gendered expectations. Here's one for you again. One study found that when female high school students viewed chemistry textbooks containing pictures of female scientists, they performed better than female students who viewed textbooks containing only pictures of males. But don't worry, that's just from the National Library of Medicine. So
I wasn't going to disagree with you, but that's okay. I think that teachers can be biased based on how much they like the student themselves. I think there's a lot of biases that aren't also gender. I think, yeah, but like also wouldn't that also hurt the test scores of the male students? Like you can have it like one way and it benefit one group, and then you have another group and it like hurts the other group. So it's like you could say, well, actually putting women everywhere as positive examples would be mutually beneficial to everyone. No, it wouldn't only be beneficial to women and hurt men. So it's like, I get what you're trying to say, but at some point it's like if we have like a 50-50 and stuff, like not like all of them have to be women now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you're actually right, because it says male students had higher comprehension after viewing stereotypical images than after viewing counter-stereotypical images. So this
there we go.
Well, hold on. The solution, I'm not positing a solution of just stick women on every science textbook and you're all done, said and done, lol. It's that if the mere existence of a photo of a female science is enough to play a role in affecting your own perception of yourself and your own confidence level, how the fuck are you able to tell me that that there's not some environmental factor in regards to women's confidence when pursuing STEM fields? Like, do you think if you're raised in an environment where your dad maybe doesn't say you're a girl so you can never be a scientist, but instead just doesn't really bring it up to you and instead talks a lot to your brother about being a scientist, you don't think that could play a role in shaping the self-perception and shaping the career choices that woman might make later on down the road?
You know what, Hunter? This might be a little bit of conceding, but you know what? I'll tell you, maybe I'm fine with that. If you want to put 50% women and 50% men in scientific textbooks, okay.
I
If you
just said
want
we
to
shouldn't do that.
inform,
Oh, God.
wait, why
Rose.
shouldn't we do that?
Rose.
I thought I was having a moment where I could agree with you.
No, I feel like the only thing we can agree on is that you're not listening to me. I just said I'm not positing a solution as just stick a bunch of women on science textbooks, lol. I brought that study up as an example of the fact that biases or that expectations can play a role in the perception you have of yourself. And if the mere existence of a photo of a female chemist is enough to change test scores for women, then how the fuck can there not be some environmental cause behind why women are less likely to pursue STEM if their entire life they're raised in an environment where their father or their mother are more likely to encourage their brother to do that?
Hunter, if it's so easy to just add a text picture and then women do better, then why can't we just add pictures and then solve the issue right there? Like, come on, like that's an easy way to fix the problem and it's not harming anybody.
No,
Like,
because then you would have to
higher test
divide, you would
scores.
literally have to have a chemistry book based for women and then based for men.
No, you just do 50% of examples are men and 50% are women. Like, I don't see an issue with that.
I don't think you're grasping at all what I'm saying, at like even slightly. Like,
There's a bigger societal issue than just that, is what you're trying to say, right?
I'm not even positing this as a solution. Sticking
Then what do you
50% females on chemistry books is not going to be enough to change this entirely. The reason I brought that study up is an example of the way that biases and environmental expectations can play a role in the perception that women have of themselves and their own confidence in their abilities. So if just a picture can have an effect, then how are you arguing that an environmental effect or an environment or the environment has no effect?
I think it has some effect, and I think not just the textbook thing. If you want to do other changes that make things seem more equal and give people more equal opportunities, then I think that that's totally fine. But I don't think that you do that and then overnight it becomes suddenly 50-50 in these fields. I think it'd be a little bit like the numbers would change, but they wouldn't be like, equal. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
I
don't think that we're
here.
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna have like an equal 50% men, 50% women kind of thing. But I think that what it is that right now, due to these rigid gendered expectations and norms that you're advocating for, this is dissuading women from pursuing fields that they are good at. This is dissuading women from pursuing fields that they initially, or not they, but women initially played a massive role in creating. And this is all due to gendered expectations, which are forced on people. So why can't we just agree to not abolish gender, but to abolish the rigid expectations that we place on people on the basis of gender?
I'll tell you what, like I said, if an individual woman says, hey, I'm really good at STEM, I want to do STEM, shows high scores and stuff, then absolutely she should be doing STEM. But I don't think that that's most women. Like, there are definitely some, and I'm not denying that, and there are some who contribute great things to STEM. And maybe, there are some societal aspects that discourage them from that. I don't think that necessarily changes my point.
It absolutely does, because you're saying, why don't we just stick with reality? Why would we encourage women to go in these fields if there's going to be sexism and all this shit? But you need to explain why. Why are women less likely to be in STEM fields right now? Do you really think it's just their woman brain makes them so they're like, oh, 1 + 1, that sounds lame. I want to go color some pink. Like, what do you think? Why do you think this is?
Like I said before, I think it's a combination of societal factors and biology.
Okay.
It's a combination.
So if there's no biological difference between men and women's abilities to do math, how then is there a biological factor at play?
I mean, I think that there is a biology, even like, okay, let's say hypothetically that women and men do absolutely show no difference whatsoever. That doesn't necessarily, like, just because you're good at something doesn't mean that you want to do it, right? Like, I was good at math. I still didn't want to do it. That's not what I wanted to devote my life to. That wasn't happy for me. I'm sure a lot of women feel the same way. You can be good at something and not want to do it.
Okay, wait. You said that the lack of women in STEM is partially environmental, but partially biological. If it's not the brain differences, then what biological factor plays a role there?
First of all, I don't necessarily concede. I said if I were to believe that. I don't necessarily fully believe that, but whatever. I do think that estrogen and testosterone hormonal differences, I mean, there's some stuff there. I don't, I'm not a scientist. I can't point to exactly what gene plays a role here, but
So
I
you
can look
think
at society and
estrogen
what's
makes
currently
you not as good at math?
it makes you not as interested. Potentially. I'd have to do some research.
You have to do a lot of research because everything you're saying is
Probably.
completely ascientific right now. I don't understand how you can say it's a biological thing. There's no evidence that there's a biological difference. So then you're saying, well, maybe it's environmental. Yes, that's my argument. It is environmental because of rigid gendered expectations. So if we get rid of the rigid gendered expectations that we place on people and encourage them to adhere to, or arguably force them, depending on which kind of household you're living in, then we will end up seeing more women in STEM.
I think gender expectations are pretty good. They're good for trans people. Some aspects maybe can be changed a bit, but I think for the most part, they're fine.
Okay, what gendered expectation? Okay, wait. Hold on. When you
You're
say
good, you're good.
when you say gendered expectations, like, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that they should be forced? Do you mean that they are just exist the way they do? Because like I already said, of course, there's going to be gendered expectations and gender roles and things that we gender. That's probably never going to be entirely abolished or whatever. That's why I don't usually argue from a pure gender abolitionist perspective. Do you think, yes or no, that gendered expectations and gendered roles that currently exist should be encouraged? Or do you think that we should just kind of leave them as is, but if somebody wants to deviate from that, we should just not give a fuck about it?
Shouldn't somebody wants to not comply to those gender norms, I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. I think you can have women, male fields, you can have men and women's fields, and that's fine. But you also have to acknowledge the reality that, like, these differences exist for a reason. These differences are fine and probably a good thing, even.
So which difference do you think is good? So are we actually then in agreement that the discouragement of women and the encouragement for men in regards to math and STEM is a bad gendered expectation that should be abolished?
If you look at some individualistic aspects, you can nitpick a few things that maybe need to be changed. But overall, I don't think we need a drastic, huge, systemic thing to put more women into STEM. I don't think we need that. You could look at individualistic things. It's like, okay, maybe this is a little.
But you're the one that brought up STEM originally, right?
Maybe. I think I did, actually.
So do you think would you like to see more women in STEM? Or do you not really care?
If they derive to that conclusion naturally, good. I don't think they should be forced into it. Okay. I don't think big corporations should be forcing them into it.
What does it mean to come to that conclusion naturally?
If you're a woman who does well in math in school and wants to pursue that on your own basic accord, and the teacher shouldn't be saying to you, oh, well, you're a woman, you shouldn't be, I think that's stupid. If a teacher actually says, you're a woman, you shouldn't be doing math. I don't think anyone really does that, but whatever. I think if a woman said, if you're a woman, you should be able to do STEM, and if that's what you're good at and that's what you want to pursue in your career, by all means do it.
Do you think that there are current expectations and roles that play a role in influencing the environment that the girl is raised in, hence having an influence on the way in which she comes to quote-unquote natural conclusions?
A little bit. Yeah.
So
to some extent.
So if we got rid of that specific gendered expectation, then that would help solve this problem.
Like I said, though, I don't think that we need to be doing that. I think it's
wait. I'm not saying that you have to tell women they must go to STEM. I'm saying that the gendered expectation that exists right now from rigid, encouraged, and arguably enforced gender roles is that women are not as good at math. This influences the way that teachers perceive themselves. It influences the way that teachers teach their students. It influences the way that teachers teach other girls in their class, hence influencing the confidence that these girls have in their own abilities, playing a massive role in how girls come to quote-unquote natural conclusions in regards to pursuing STEM or not pursuing STEM. So should we or should we not get rid of that encouragement and that gender role?
Some individualistic aspects, maybe yes, but not all
I'm
of them.
talking about an individual aspect. Do you think that that individual aspect should be done away with?
Which one specifically?
This idea that based on gender, women and men, that men are better at math, women are not as good at math, and even if you're not blatantly saying that to the woman, it's still socialized, and there are still subconscious biases that play a massive role there. Should we get rid of that? Sorry.
They're bias play. I think some of them are okay and some of them are not.
You're
Okay.
weaseling. You're weaseling hardcore right now. Yeah, I know that you think some of them are okay, some of them are not. I'm giving you one of them, which falls into what you just said, is that this is part of some of them. This is one of them. Should it be done away with, or should it stay?
I think it's as easy as that. Like, you look at the textbook thing, that's an easy change. It's not going to like systemically change how we view
I'm
gender
not
in
talking
society.
about practicality.
But if we go
I
too
have
hard
to.
on
I'm gonna
it,
have to
it
keep
will,
cutting
it
you off
hurts me.
because no. I have to keep cutting you off
Totally
because
fine.
you're weaseling away from the question. I'm not asking you what is the most practical approach in how we abolish this expectation. I'm asking you principally from your perspective of being in favor of gender or traditional gender roles. Should we get rid of one of those gendered roles and expectations, which is men are better at math, women are not as good at math?
Thing.
What?
I don't believe it's as simple as a yes or no, but if you're going to make me answer, I'm going to say no.
So we shouldn't
So
get rid of that gendered expectation.
But that's a dishonest way of how I actually feel, because I don't believe yes or no really answers how I feel about that.
So
So
what-
if you want me to
Go
give
ahead
you
and
a
give me your
simple
non-yes or no answer.
I already did, though. Like, I literally like spent the last few minutes explaining why I felt that way.
Can you explain it again? Because I think I wasn't listening. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. Oh, okay. Wow, lovely. I just don't think that it's like, I'm sorry. When you can change individualistic aspects, like you could change like more women being on like textbooks, okay. But when you like basically say to your children who's like a 5-year-old girl's like, hey, you should be involved in STEM, and give the same conversation to men and women equally, it's like maybe that's a bit far. You can have it so where teachers aren't biased in some aspects, and that teachers
And how
can
do
be
you
like,
do
okay,
that?
maybe I should.
How do you make it so that teachers aren't biased in some aspects? Do you think that has any bearing on the way in which those teachers are socialized growing up?
A little bit, but I think, like I said, you could have it, and like I said, I don't know how to best implement a system like this, but if a teacher or like a college applicator, they grade something based on not the name, not the race of the student, not the gender, but just like the student's work, I don't know how you can practically implicate that, but if you could, that would be better. I just don't, like, there's ways to make the system better for people without radically changing it, and I don't believe we should radically change it.
Okay, so how do you make the teacher or the college administrator less biased? Do you think that any of these biases has anything to do in regards to the way in which women are socialized growing up?
Definitely has some aspects to it, and it's like,
So
you
should we
can't
get
change
rid of
it.
that aspect?
I don't think so.
So you're acknowledging what the problem is, but you don't want to get rid of what's causing the problem.
Because I think to get rid of it would cause more harm than it benefits.
What is the harm that it would cause?
I think if you have a world where gender does not exist, where gender is, dare
You're
I
not
say,
you're not arguing
abolished.
honestly anymore. You're not arguing in good faith.
How am I not arguing?
Because I never once said that we should just get rid of gender and there should be no gender. That is literally not what I said. You said that it's probably okay to get rid of some aspects while keeping some other aspects. I'm asking you a very pointed and direct question, which is, one of the aspects of gender is the encouragement and enforcement, both blatantly and subconsciously, which tells women that they are not as good at math or science, or that those fields are more for men. Should we get rid of that specific part of gender?
The problem, Hunter, is if I say yes, you're just going to call me a hypocrite, and then you're just going to start like saying all this stuff like, oh, well, that means we should get rid of gender and all these other things. So
No,
it's like,
that's not what I'm saying. I'm asking if you are willing to concede that some elements of gender are clearly doing harm and should be done away with. And this is one of those elements.
Some of them are. I don't know if this one particularly is. Some aspects of it are, but I don't think that buys into all gender is like. Actually, I don't want to put like blanket statements in your mouth, because that probably isn't a good thing to do. I don't want to like say what
you keep saying. Things, yeah, that have nothing to do with what I'm saying. If you said yes, I'm not going to say, ha, So that means we should get rid of everything else to do with gender. That's not my argument. It never was, and I never once even hinted that was my argument this entire time.
What would you do if I did say yes? Like, I don't want to say yes, but what would you do if I said it? I'm just curious.
If you said yes, then we would be able to acknowledge that there is an element of gender that is forced on people or encouraged, that is doing harm, that should be done away with.
But I can agree with you on that without saying yes. I can agree with you on that sentiment without saying yes to this specific thing.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you're like melting down in real time here, or if you're like, I don't know. Are you okay? Like,
what do you mean? Am I okay?
Like, it sounds to me like you're no. It sounds to me like you're living in a home with lead paint. Like, the arguments you're making are so disconnected. They make no fucking sense. The cognitive dissonance here it's unfathomable. You're saying you're in favor of enforcing gender roles and expectations. You're saying encouraging it is okay in your book. I'm saying to you, okay, cool. Are there any aspects of these gender roles that are encouraged or enforced that should be done away with? AKA the encouragement for men to pursue science, and not the same encouragement that exists, that it's not there for women. Should we get rid of those expectations? This has been like the same question now like 50 times.
I know, and that's like, we're not really making progress here, and that's kind of...
Because you're just talking in circles. You're not making any argument.
I'm just saying how I feel, and I feel like you're... Like, I don't know what to say at this point.
That's the problem, I think, is the entire time is that you're solely gauging what you're feeling, and you're not actually engaging with any of the empiricism or any of the actual explanations. This reminds me of when I argue with conservatives about systemic racism, when we like walk through showing how previous historical racist policies led to where black people are today. And then once they kind of acknowledge and agree to every single premise, they then say, nuh-uh, that's what's happening right here. I've explained to you in depth how the gendered expectations and socialization of women is playing a role in deterring them from pursuing science, STEM, and math. But then you're simultaneously saying, yeah, that's probably the case, but we shouldn't get rid of that expectation.
Because I don't think it's as simple to be like, this is the 100% everything causing it is based on this one thing.
It doesn't have to be. That doesn't have to be the only thing, but it's a massive chunk.
It is a sized chunk, probably decently sized.
So should we get rid of that decently sized chunk?
Personally, some aspects could be improved, but not the whole thing.
All right. I appreciate the conversation.
That's all I have to say.
No.
Of course, thanks for having me on.
You're super fucking weaselly. I don't know if you like are doing it intentionally, but when I ask you a specific question and then you say, well, some could be done away with and some could not, you're purposely...
Well, that's me being honest.
No, because you're okay, whatever it is purposeful vagueness that allows you to weasel away from answering the question, and in turn, you're then able to never give an answer. This is like if you said, Hunter, do you think that trans people are valid? And then I said, well, I think that some identities are valid and some identities aren't. And then you walk me through how, well, here's why I believe that trans people are valid. Here's all the science. Here's all the literature on this. So do you think that that trans people are valid? And then I say, well, I think some identities are probably valid. I don't know. Some are, some aren't. It's a weaselly way of engaging in conversation. Whether you're doing it intentionally or not, you really need to have some self-reflection.
Okay, I don't think things are as black and white, and God forbid someone be nuanced in something, but
whatever. You're not being nuanced. You're being the opposite of nuanced. You're being weaselly and refusing to even pinpoint a single issue so that we can then have a nuanced conversation about it. Thanks for wasting my time for 57 minutes. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Holy fuck, dude. I thought that this was going to be like a better conversation, like a much more good faith sort of discussion, and that turned into something completely opposite. She was being super weaselly. Whether intentionally or not, that was super bad faith and weaselly of her. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified when I drop a new video.